Jake Morrison adjusted his tie for the third time in 10 minutes. He stood outside the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber, watching alien delegates float, crawl, and shimmer past him. After 3 years of attending these meetings, he still felt like a school kid waiting outside the principal's office. The space station, Nexus Prime, was huge. It had to be, considering it housed 12 different alien species and now humans too. The corridors were wide enough for the giant Zephyrians to walk comfortably, while special atmospheric zones kept the gas-based ethereals from dissolving into nothing. Jake had learned to breathe carefully in the mixed atmosphere that smelled like ozone and rotting flowers. His earpiece crackled to life. "Ambassador, this is Captain Hayes. We're in position and monitoring all frequencies. How are you feeling about today's presentation?" Jake smiled slightly. Lisa Hayes commanded the UNS Determination, the human diplomatic security vessel parked just outside the station. She and her crew had been his backup for every council meeting, and they were getting as tired as he was of watching humans get treated like children. "Same as always, Captain. Hopeful but realistic." Jake's voice carried the practiced calm of a career diplomat. "Are you picking up any chatter from the other delegations?" "The usual stuff. The Zephyrians are complaining about having to share air with mammals. The resonants are humming those crystal songs that give everyone headaches. And the ethereals are being mysterious as always." Lisa's tone held barely controlled frustration. "Jake, you know they're going to shoot down your proposal again, right?" "Maybe, but we have to try." The doors opened with a sound like wind chimes mixed with grinding metal. Jake walked into the chamber, nodding politely to the various alien representatives. The room was designed to accommodate everyone, with different sections for different environmental needs. The humans got a small area near the back, which Jake had learned to accept with grace. Vexthel, the Zephyrian Hivemind coordinator, dominated the center of the room. She was 15 feet tall, covered in shimmering green chitin, with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected light like mirrors. Her voice sounded like 100 people speaking at once because that's exactly what it was. "The monthly assembly will begin. Let us address the standard reports first." Jake listened as each species gave updates about their territories, trade agreements, and scientific discoveries. The resonants had found 3 new crystal formations that would improve their energy networks. The ethereals had discovered a gas giant with unusual atmospheric properties. The Zephyrians had expanded their hive colonies to 4 new star systems. When it came to humanity's turn, Jake stood up. Earth's government reports successful completion of the asteroid mining project in the Tau Ceti system. We've also established 2 new agricultural colonies and completed the medical research station near Jupiter. There was a sound that Jake had learned to recognize as polite alien laughter. Eco Prime Kethver, the resonant representative, chimed in with his crystal voice. "How charming. The humans are still playing with rocks and growing vegetables." More laughter from around the room. Jake kept his expression neutral. "We also have a new proposal for the council's consideration." The laughter stopped. Vexthel's compound eyes focused on Jake with what he hoped was interest rather than annoyance. "Proceed, human representative." Jake activated his holographic display, showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy's outer rim. Red dots marked dozens of locations where space seemed to be ... dong. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected anomalies in these regions. We believe they're quantum rifts, tears in the fabric of space-time itself. The chamber fell silent. Jake continued, "These rifts are expanding at a measurable rate. They're not natural phenomena. Something is causing them to appear, and we believe they represent a significant threat to galactic security." Drift speaker Yomoto, the ethereal representative, spoke through his translation device. His voice sounded like wind through leaves. "And what do the humans propose to do about these supposed rifts?" "We request permission to organize a joint scientific expedition. Earth's quantum physics research team has developed new scanning techniques that could help us understand what's causing these anomalies." The silence stretched for a full minute. Then Vexthel began to laugh, a sound like breaking glass mixed with buzzing insects. You want us to waste resources investigating human paranoia about empty space? Eco-Prime Kethver crystals chimed in harmony. The humans see danger everywhere. Last year, it was the asteroid swarm that turned out to be ice. Before that, it was the radio signals that came from a natural pulsar. This is different, Jake said, maintaining his diplomatic tone. Our scientists have been studying these rifts for months. The energy signatures don't match any known natural phenomenon. Human science, Vexville said, her voice dripping with condescension. 3 years in the council, and you still think your primitive understanding of the universe compares to civilizations that have been exploring space for millennia. Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice steady. We're not claiming to know everything. That's why we're requesting a joint expedition. Your species have knowledge and technology that could complement our research? The alien representatives looked at each other, communicating through methods Jake couldn't understand. Finally, Vexville spoke again. The Council finds no merit in this proposal. Humanity should focus on tasks more appropriate to their current level of development. Such as? Jake asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Mining, basic agriculture. Perhaps some simple manufacturing for the more advanced species. The Zephyrian's tone was like a teacher explaining something to a slow student. Leave the important scientific work to those who understand it. Aboard the UNS Determination, Captain Lisa Hayes watched the proceedings through the diplomatic feed. Her tactical officer, Ben Carter, shook his head in disgust. 3 years of this garbage, and they still treat us like we're too stupid to tie our own shoes. Easy, Ben, Lisa said, though her own knuckles were white from gripping her command chair. Jake's doing his job. Communications specialist Amy Foster looked up from her station. Captain, I'm picking up encrypted transmissions between the council ships. They're not just dismissing our proposal. They're actively discussing ways to limit human expansion. What kind of limits? Restricting us to our home system, placing observers on our colonies. Some of them are talking about treating us like a protected species, like we're animals in a zoo. Lisa's expression darkened. Keep monitoring, and Amy? Start running a full-spectrum analysis on those quantum rifts Jake mentioned. I want to know what our scientists have really found. Back in the council chamber, Jake made one final attempt. With respect, I believe the council is making a mistake. These rifts represent a genuine threat that requires immediate investigation. The council has spoken, Vexville said. Perhaps in a few hundred years, when humanity has matured as a species. You'll be ready for such responsibilities. Jake nodded slowly. Very well. I thank the council for their consideration. We'll revise our proposal and present it again at the next meeting. As he gathered his materials, Jake heard the familiar sound of alien laughter behind him. They thought. He was backing down, accepting their decision like a good little human. They had no idea that he was actually buying time. The quantum rifts were real. Jake had seen the classified reports that Dr. Kevin Phillips had compiled. The energy signatures weren't just unusual, they were impossible according to current physics. Something was coming through those rifts, something that had been testing the barriers between dimensions for months, and Earth's government had been preparing for the possibility that humanity might have to face that threat alone. Jake walked out of the council chamber with the same polite smile he'd worn for 3 years. Behind him, the alien representatives continued their meeting, dismissing the human concerns as they always did. They had no idea that humanity's politeness was a choice, not a weakness. That choice was about to become much more expensive to maintain. On the UN's determination, Captain Hayes received a priority transmission from Admiral Tony Clark. The message was brief. Initiate Protocol 7 preparation. Maintain diplomatic posture until further notice. Lisa smiled grimly. Finally, someone was taking the gloves off. 2 weeks had passed since the Council's dismissal of humanity's proposal. Jake Morrison stood in the same chamber, but this time he carried a much thicker data pad. Dr. Kevin Phillips had worked day and night to compile every piece of evidence. They had about the quantum rifts. The scientist had dark circles under his eyes when he briefed Jake the night before. Ambassador, these readings are getting worse. The rifts aren't just expanding randomly. They're following a pattern, like something is testing different locations to find the weakest spots. Now Jake faced the council again, hoping that more evidence would change their minds. He watched as the alien representatives settled into their positions, most of them looking bored before he even began speaking. Honored council members, Jake began. I return with additional data about the quantum rifts detected at our galaxy's rim. Vexthal's compound eyes swiveled toward him with what Jake recognized as barely contained irritation. The humans persist. In their delusions, how tedious. Please just look at the evidence. Jake activated his holographic display, showing detailed scans of the rifts. These are not natural phenomena. The energy patterns show clear signs of artificial manipulation. The display showed waves of exotic energy pulsing through the rifts in regular intervals. Dr. Phillips had identified 17 different types of radiation that shouldn't exist according to current physics. The rifts were also growing larger, expanding at a rate that suggested purposeful modification. Eco-prime Kethverse crystals chimed dismissively. Human instruments detecting impossible readings. How surprising. Perhaps your equipment is broken. We've checked and rechecked our instruments, Jake said, keeping his voice level. We've also compared our readings with data from 3 different monitoring stations. The results are consistent. Jake pulled up another display showing the progression of the rifts over the past month. As you can see, the rifts are not random. They're appearing in a specific pattern, moving inward from the galaxy's edge toward populated systems. And what do the humans think this means? Drift speaker Yomoto asked, his voice carrying the tone of an adult humoring a child. We believe something is using these rifts to scout our galaxy. Something that doesn't belong here. Jake paused, letting that sink in. We're not the only ones who've noticed this pattern. Our deep space listening posts have detected communication attempts from unknown sources. This was partially true. Earth's monitoring stations had picked up strange signals, but they were too distorted to understand. Still, Jake hoped it might get the council's attention. It didn't work. Vexthal's laughter filled the chamber. The humans hear voices in static and see invaders in empty space. Their fear makes them imagine threats where none exist. Your species has been part of this. Council for 3 years, Eco-Prime Kethver added. We have been exploring space for over 2,000 years. Do you truly believe you would detect something that we would miss? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Jake felt his diplomatic training warring with his growing frustration. I believe that different perspectives can be valuable. Fresh eyes might notice things that familiarity overlooks. Fresh eyes? Vexthal repeated, her voice dripping with mockery. Is that what humans call inexperience now? On the N's determination, Captain Lisa Hayes watched the proceedings with growing anger. Her tactical officer Ben Carter was running calculations on his display, his face grim. Captain, Amy Foster called from her communications station. I'm intercepting transmissions between the council ships. They're not just ignoring our warnings. They're actively planning to restrict human activities. What kind of restrictions? Lisa asked. They want to limit our expansion to current territories. No new colonies, no independent research missions, and they want to place council observers on all our major installations. Ben looked up from his calculations. Captain, I've been analyzing the quantum rift data that Dr. Phillips shared with us. If these readings are accurate, we're looking at dimensional breaches that could allow massive objects to pass through. How massive? Ship-sized? Maybe bigger. Lisa's expression hardened. She opened a secure channel to Admiral Tony Clark. Admiral, we need to talk. The Council isn't just dismissing our warnings about the rifts. They're preparing to put us under house arrest. Back in the Council chamber, Jake was making his final appeal. I'm not asking you to take action based on our word alone. I'm asking you to investigate. Send your own ships to verify our findings. Why? Would we waste resources on human paranoia? Vexthal asked. Your species sees danger everywhere because you're naturally aggressive. It's a primitive survival instinct. We're not being aggressive, Jake said. We're being cautious about a potential threat to everyone in this galaxy. Everyone? Eco-Prime Kethver-S crystals resonated with what Jake had learned to recognize as contempt. You speak as if humans are equals in this council. You're the newest members, the least experienced, the most primitive. Your opinions carry little? Wait, Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. Are you saying that human concerns don't matter to this council? We're saying that human concerns are usually based on misunderstanding, Drift Speaker Yulmodo replied. Your species lacks the wisdom that comes from centuries of galactic experience. Then perhaps it's time for humanity to gain that experience, Jake said carefully. We request permission to investigate the rifts independently. We'll share all our findings with the council. The alien representatives exchanged glances. Jake could see them communicating through their various nonverbal methods. Finally, Vexville spoke. The council denies this request. Humanity's current level of development makes independent deep space exploration inadvisable. Inadvisable? Jake asked. Dangerous, Eco-Prime Kethver clarified. To yourselves and potentially to others. Your species is emotionally unstable and prone to overreaction. Allowing you to investigate imaginary threats would be irresponsible. We propose instead, Vexville continued, that humanity focus on more appropriate activities? Mining operations, agricultural development, basic manufacturing. Leave the important work to species capable of handling it. Jake felt his diplomatic mask slipping for just a moment. And if we refuse? Then the Council will need to reconsider humanity's status as an independent member species. Vexville's voice carried clear threat. Perhaps humans would benefit from a period of guided development under Council supervision. The chamber fell silent. Jake understood what they were really saying. Submit to their authority completely or face the possibility of being treated like a protected species with no rights to self-determination. I see, Jake said quietly. And how long would this guided development last? Until the Council determines that humanity has reached sufficient maturity, Drift Speaker Yulmodo replied. Our preliminary assessment suggests several thousand years. Several thousand years. Jake let that number sink in. They were talking about treating humanity like children for longer than human civilization had existed. I need to consult with my government, Jake said. Of course, Vexville said graciously. Take all the time you need. But understand that the Council's patience is not infinite. We expect humanity's cooperation with our recommendations. Jake gathered his materials and left the chamber. Behind him, he could hear the alien representatives discussing trade agreements and territorial expansions as if nothing important had happened. On the UNS determination, Lisa Hayes received Jake's coded transmission. The message was brief. They've shown their true colors. Recommend immediate implementation of defensive measures. Lisa opened a secure channel to Admiral Clark. Admiral, it's Lisa. We need to talk about Protocol 7. Already in motion, Captain. How long before the ambassador returns to the ship? 20 minutes. Good, we have a lot to discuss. Amy Foster looked up from her communications station. Captain, I'm picking up something strange. The quantum rifts that Dr. Phillips has been monitoring, they're not just expanding anymore. Something's testing them from the other side. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of testing? Energy pulses like something's trying to push through, and Captain? The signals are getting stronger. The Council had just made it clear that humanity was on its own. Jake wondered if they had any idea what they'd just unleashed. For 3 years, Earth had been playing the role of the grateful junior partner. Accepting condescension and limitations with patience, that patience was about to run out. As Jake walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime, he activated his secure communicator. This is Morrison. Execute Protocol 7 authorization. Full implementation. The response came immediately. Acknowledged, Ambassador. Welcome to the real war. 3 days after the Council's ultimatum, the galaxy changed forever. Amy Foster was monitoring deep space communications when her console erupted in alarms. She stared at the readings, her face going pale. Captain Hayes, you need to see this. Right now, Lisa rushed to Amy's station. On the display, energy readings showed massive spikes coming from the largest quantum rift at the galaxy's edge. The numbers were beyond anything they'd recorded before. "Something's coming through," Amy whispered. The first contact wasn't a greeting. It was a demand. A ship emerged from the rift, and it was unlike anything in the galactic database. The vessel was massive, easily the size of a small moon. Its hull seemed to shift between solid crystal and flowing organic matter, pulsing with dark energy that made their instruments scream warnings. The moment it fully materialized, it began broadcasting on every frequency simultaneously. The message was simple and terrifying. "We are the Devourers. You will surrender your resources and your lives. Resistance is futile. We have consumed 73 galaxies. Yours will be 74. Jake Morrison was in an emergency meeting with Admiral Tony Clark when the transmission reached them. The Admiral's weathered face showed no surprise, only grim determination. "How long have you known about this?" Jake asked. "We've suspected something like this for months," Clark replied. "The quantum rifts were too organized, too purposeful. Dr. Phillips confirmed our worst fears yesterday. These beings, these Devourers, they don't just travel between galaxies. They turn dimensional barriers into highways. And the Council? They're about to learn what real threats look like." On Nexus Prime, the Council chamber was in chaos. Vexthal's compound eyes were wide with panic as she coordinated with her hive mind. Eco-Prime Kethferous crystals were resonating at frequencies that hurt to hear. Even Drift Speaker Yulmoto had condensed into his most solid form, abandoning his usual ethereal appearance. "Impossible," Vexthal kept repeating. "Our defensive network should have detected any approach." "They didn't come from normal space," Jake said quietly from his position in the back of the chamber. "They came through the quantum rifts we've been warning you about." The alien representatives turned to stare at him. For the first time in 3 years, they weren't looking at him with condescension. They were looking at him with fear. "The humans knew," Eco-Prime Kethfer chimed, his voice cracking with stress. "You knew this was coming, we suspected," Jake corrected. "That's why we wanted to investigate. That's why we asked for your help." Vexthal's voice shook. "What do you know about these Devourers?" "Not much more than you do. But we've been preparing for the possibility that the rifts represented a threat." "Preparing how?" Jake's expression remained carefully neutral. "We've been studying ways to defend against dimensional incursions. Our scientists have been working on countermeasures for months." The truth was more complex. Earth's government had been developing contingency plans ever since the first appeared. They'd assumed that if a real threat emerged, humanity would face it alone. The Council's dismissive attitude had only confirmed that assumption. The Devourer ship began moving toward the nearest inhabited system. Its weapons, if they could be called that, started firing. But these weren't energy beams or projectiles. They were reality distortions that made space itself unstable. The Zephyrian Defense Fleet moved to intercept 50 massive warships, each one a testament to centuries of military engineering. They had armor that could withstand stellar radiation and weapons that could crack planets. It wasn't enough. The Devourer weapons passed through the Zephyrian shields like they weren't there. The energy beams that had protected those ships for 1,000 years meant nothing against weapons that operated on quantum principles. Worse, the enemy had deployed some kind of parasitic technology that burrowed into ship hulls and began converting the metal into more weapons. Captain Hayes watched the battle from the UNS Determination. Her tactical officer, Ben Carter, was analyzing the combat data in real time. "Their weapons don't just damage ships," Ben reported. "They're converting matter into energy and feeding it back to the main vessel. The more ships they destroy, the stronger they get." "What about the other species' fleets?" "The Resonants are trying to use their crystal technology to create barriers, but the enemy weapons are disrupting their harmonic frequencies. The ethereals can't phase shift because the Devourers are using dimensional anchors that lock them in normal space." Lisa opened the secure channel to Admiral Clark. "Admiral, the Council fleets are getting destroyed. They're not equipped for this kind of warfare, I know. We're watching from the command ship. How long before they ask for our help? Based on current casualty rates, about 6 hours. Good, that gives us time to position our forces. The Resonant Fleet engaged next, their ships forming geometric patterns that should have created impenetrable energy shields. The Crystalline vessels moved with perfect coordination, their weapons firing in harmony to create destructive interference patterns. The Devourers adapted in minutes. Their ship began emitting a counter-frequency that shattered the resonant coordination. Crystal hulls that had endured for centuries cracked and failed. The elegant formations dissolved into chaos as each ship fought desperately for survival. Dr. Kevin Phillips watched the battle data from his research station. He was exhausted from weeks of analysis, but the adrenaline kept him focused. The Devourers aren't just using advanced technology, he told his assistant Dr. Nina Walsh. They're weaponizing physics itself. What do you mean? Look at these readings. They're not firing energy weapons. They're firing concentrated violations of natural law. Their ship is creating localized areas where the fundamental forces work differently. Nina stared at the data. That's impossible. That's what we thought. But they've been doing this for so long, across so many galaxies, that they've learned to make the impossible routine. The ethereal fleet was the last to engage. Their ships were barely visible, existing partially in normal space and partially in other dimensions. It was a defensive strategy that had protected them for millennia. The Devourers deployed dimensional anchors, devices that forced the ethereal ships back into normal space. Suddenly visible and solid, the ghostly vessels became easy targets. Their phase-shifting advantage was gone, leaving them vulnerable to weapons they'd never had to face. In 4 hours, the combined Council fleets lost 60% of their ships. The Devourer vessel hadn't even been scratched. The emergency transmission from Vexthal came exactly when Admiral Clark predicted it would. The Zephyrian's voice was broken, desperate. Human fleet, this is an emergency request for assistance. The Council fleets we are being destroyed. We need immediate help. Jake Morrison was standing in the Admiral's command center when the message arrived. He looked at the older man with a mixture of sadness and determination. Admiral, they're asking for our help now, after telling us to go home and leave the fighting to the experienced species? Yes, Clark was quiet for a long moment. What do you think we should do, Ambassador? Jake thought about 3 years of condescension, dismissal, and threats. He thought about the Council's plan to treat humanity like children for thousands of years. He thought about their refusal to listen to warnings that could have prevented this disaster. I think, Jake said slowly, that we should follow the Council's direct orders. They told us to retreat to our home system and leave galactic defense to the experienced species. We should respect their authority, Admiral Clark smiled grimly. Prepare a response to the Council. The message Jake sent back was brief and perfectly polite. The human fleet acknowledges the Council's request for assistance. However, we must respectfully decline to violate your direct orders to retreat to our home system. We will comply with all established protocols and await further instructions. From our galactic superiors? For the first time in galactic history, the Council experienced what it meant when humans stopped being accommodating. The diplomatic mask was still in place, but something fundamental had changed. Humanity wasn't being rude or aggressive. They were being perfectly, devastatingly polite. The Council had spent 3 years teaching humanity to know their place. Now they were about to learn what that place actually was. Jake Morrison's polite refusal hit the Council like a physical blow. For 3 years, humanity had been the eager junior partners, always ready to help, always trying to prove themselves worthy. Now, when the galaxy was burning, they were following orders with perfect diplomatic correctness. Vexthal's compound eyes focused on Jake's image on the communication screen. Her voice shook with panic and rage. Human Ambassador, this is not the time for political games. We need your help immediately. I understand the urgency of the situation, Jake replied with the same calm tone he'd used for every Council meeting. However, humanity has been specifically instructed to avoid independent military actions. We're simply following the Council's guidance. The guidance has changed, Ecoprime Kethver chimed desperately. We're authorizing human involvement in the defense. I appreciate that, Jake said. However, any change in our operational parameters requires approval from Earth's government. That process typically takes several days, sometimes weeks. We want to make sure we follow all proper procedures. For the first time in galactic history, aliens were learning what human bureaucracy felt like when it was used as a weapon. On the UNS Determination, Captain Lisa Hayes was watching her tactical displays with satisfaction. Amy, what's the status of our hidden fleet elements? Amy Foster's fingers flew over her console. All ships report ready. The mining vessels have deployed their weapon systems. The research stations have activated their defense grids. The merchant ships have revealed their military configurations. How many ships total? 372 combat-capable vessels, Admiral Clark estimates. That's 3 times what the Council thinks we have. Ben Carter looked up from his analysis station. Captain, the Devourer ship is heading for the Zephyrian home system. At current speed, it'll reach their core worlds in 18 hours. Lisa nodded. Just enough time for humanity to accidentally overcome our bureaucratic delays. The truth was that humanity had been preparing for this moment since the first quantum rift appeared. While the Council dismissed their concerns, Earth's military had been developing weapons and tactics, specifically designed for dimensional warfare. Admiral Tony Clark stood on the bridge of the UNS Vigilance, the command ship that the Council had never seen because it was disguised as a deep space research station. Around him, his staff coordinated the movement of ships that had been hiding throughout the galaxy for months. Commander Moore, what's the status of the Defiance battle? Group? Commander Rachel Moore's voice came through clearly. All ships ready, Admiral. The quantum torpedoes are loaded and the dimensional scramblers are online. Captain Turner? And Retribution standing by, Alex Turner reported. Gravity cannons are charged and ready. The crew is eager to test these new weapons. Clark smiled. Grimly, the Council species had spent centuries perfecting conventional space warfare. They had energy shields, particle weapons, and armor that could withstand incredible punishment. But they'd never faced an enemy that fought in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Humanity had spent 3 years studying that exact problem. Dr. Kevin Phillips was in his element aboard the research vessel ENS Discovery. The ship looked like a harmless science platform to anyone scanning it. In reality, it was the most advanced vessel in the human fleet, equipped with experimental technology that the Council would have banned if they'd known about it. Dr. Walsh, are the dimensional anchor disruptors ready? Nina Walsh nodded from her position at the quantum mechanics station. All systems green. We can neutralize their ability to lock ships in normal space. Excellent. What about the rift destabilizers? Ready for deployment. If we can get close enough to their ship, we can collapse the dimensional portals they're using for reinforcement. Kevin allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. While the Council had been dismissing human science as primitive, Earth's researchers had been solving problems that the aliens didn't even know existed. The Devourer ship continued its advance toward the Zephyrian home system. Its weapons had adapted to every defense the Council fleets could deploy. The crystalline hull pulsed with energy absorbed from destroyed ships, making it stronger with each victory. Then something unexpected happened. A small group of human ships appeared in the Devourer's path. They weren't the massive battleships that the Council species favored. They were sleek, fast vessels that moved in patterns the alien computer systems couldn't predict. The Devourer ship fired its reality distortion weapons at the human vessels. The beams that had torn through Zephyrian armor and resonant shields simply passed through empty space. The human ships weren't there anymore. Commander Steve Hughes led the first assault group from his ship, the ENS Phantom. His vessels were equipped with dimensional phase drives that let them slip between layers of reality. It was technology that the Council had declared too dangerous to research. All ships begin evasive pattern delta. Let's see how they handle targets that don't. Stay in one dimension. The human ships flickered in and out of normal space, appearing just long enough to fire their weapons before vanishing again. Their quantum torpedoes didn't target the Devourer's hull. Instead, they targeted the dimensional distortions the enemy ship was using to power its weapons. The Devourer ship tried to adapt, but its systems were designed for conventional space combat. It had never faced an enemy that could fight from multiple dimensions simultaneously. Back on Nexus Prime, the Council representatives watched in stunned silence as the human ships began their assault. The vessels were small compared to traditional battleships, but they moved like nothing the aliens had ever seen. Impossible, Vexthel whispered. Those ships are phasing through dimensions. That technology is theoretical at best. Apparently not for humans, Jake said quietly. He was still maintaining his diplomatic posture, but there was something different in his voice. The eager-to-please tone was gone, replaced by something colder and more professional. How long have you been developing this technology? Eco Prime, Kethfer demanded. About as long as we've been warning you about the quantum rifts, Jake replied. We found that preparation is important when facing unknown threats. The first wave of human ships successfully disrupted several of the Devourer's weapon systems, but the enemy adapted quickly, deploying new defenses that made the dimensional phasing more difficult. That's when the second wave arrived. Captain Alex Turner's UN's Retribution led 12 ships equipped with gravity cannons, weapons that created localized gravitational fields strong enough to bend space-time. The Devourer ship found itself caught in artificial gravity wells that prevented it from maneuvering effectively. Target their dimensional anchor points, Turner ordered. Let's see how they like being stuck in normal space. The gravity cannons fired in sequence, creating a web of gravitational distortions around the enemy vessel. For the first time since emerging from the rift, the Devourer ship was forced to fight using conventional physics. Dr. Phillips watched the battle data with growing excitement. It's working! We're forcing them to fight on our terms instead of theirs. The third wave was led by Commander Rachel Moore aboard the UNS Defiance. Her ships carried the most experimental weapons in the human arsenal, dimensional scramblers that could disrupt the quantum fields the Devourers used for their reality-altering attacks. All ships begin scrambler bombardment. Let's turn their own dimensional technology against them. The scramblers fired waves of quantum interference that made the space around the Devourer ship unstable. The enemy's weapons began to malfunction, their targeting systems confused by the constantly shifting dimensional parameters. For the first time since the battle began, the Devourer ship took actual damage. Its crystalline hull cracked as the dimensional distortions it relied on became chaotic and unpredictable. On the Council communication channels, panic was giving way to amazement. The human fleet was actually hurting the enemy that had destroyed their combined forces. How is this possible? Drift Speaker Yomoto asked. Your weapons technology was supposed to be primitive. Jake Morrison smiled for the first time in days. You're right, our weapons are primitive compared to yours. But we designed them specifically to fight enemies that use dimensional warfare. Sometimes primitive solutions work better than advanced ones. The Devourer ship began to retreat toward its dimensional rift, but the human ships pursued it relentlessly. They had spent months preparing for this exact scenario, and they weren't about to let their enemy escape. Admiral Clark opened a communication channel to all human ships. This is Admiral Clark to all units. Execute Operation Doorstop. We're going to make sure these things can't come back? The final phase of the human counterattack was about to begin. Operation Doorstop was humanity's most classified military project. While the Council had been dismissing human concerns about the quantum rifts, Earth's scientists had been developing technology to seal dimensional breaches permanently. Dr. Kevin Phillips coordinated the final assault from the UN's Discovery. His ship moved closer to the retreating Devourer vessel, its experimental dimensional anchor array charging for deployment. Admiral Clark, we're in position, Kevin reported. The rift destabilizers are ready, confirmed Dr. All ships maintain Formation around the target. Don't let it reach the portal. The Devourer ship was badly damaged but still dangerous. Its crystalline hull showed cracks where the human weapons had disrupted its dimensional defenses. For the first time in its long existence, it was experiencing something new. Fear. The alien vessel tried desperately to reach the quantum rift that had brought it to this galaxy. It needed to escape, to warn the rest of its species about these strange humans who fought in ways that shouldn't be possible. It never made it, Lieutenant. Colonel Matt Rodriguez led the boarding assault from his ship, the UNS Infiltrator. His Marines wore powered armor that could phase between dimensions, making them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. All squads, prepare for dimensional breach, Rodriguez ordered. Remember, their ship exists in multiple dimensions. Simultaneously, stay flexible and watch your phase indicators. The boarding pods launched directly through the Devourer ship's hull, using the same dimensional phasing technology that powered the human fleet. The enemy's defenses were designed to stop physical projectiles and energy weapons, not soldiers. Who could appear inside their ship without warning? Rodriguez's troops materialized in the Devourer command center, their weapons already firing. The aliens inside were unlike anything in the galactic database. They seemed to be made of living shadow, constantly shifting between solid and incorporeal states. Contact, Rodriguez reported. Engaging hostile entities. They're trying to phase shift, but our armor is matching their dimensional frequency. The battle inside the ship was brief but decisive. The Devourers had never faced enemies who could fight them on their own dimensional terms. Their advantages of superior technology and reality manipulation meant nothing against opponents who had spent years preparing specifically for this encounter. Dr. Nina Walsh activated the dimensional anchor array. From her position on the Discovery, the device created a stable quantum field around the entire area, preventing any dimensional manipulation within its range. Anchors deployed, she reported. The rift is destabilizing. Whatever comes through won't be able to maintain coherence. In normal space, the quantum rift began to collapse, but not before one final surprise emerged. A massive fleet of Devourer ships pushed through the closing portal, their hulls glowing with the energy of consumed galaxies. The Council representatives watching from Nexus Prime fell silent. Hundreds of enemy vessels now filled local space, each one capable of destroying entire worlds. "It's over," Vexel whispered. "Even with human assistance, we cannot face a fleet that size?" Jake Morrison stood in the council chamber, but his expression had changed completely. The diplomatic mask was gone, replaced by something the aliens had never seen before. Confidence backed by absolute certainty. "Actually," Jake said calmly, "I think you'll find that the situation is quite different from what you expect." "Admiral." Clark's voice came through the communication system, addressing the entire galaxy. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Clark, execute Protocol 7, full deployment. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity really looks like." What happened next changed galactic history forever. Ships began appearing throughout the local star system, not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands. Every asteroid mining station revealed itself to be a disguised military platform. Every research outpost deployed hidden weapon arrays. Every merchant vessel shed its civilian disguise to reveal advanced warships underneath. The human fleet wasn't small and inexperienced. It was vast and had been hiding in plain sight for 3 years. Captain Lisa Hayes aboard the UNS Determination coordinated with battle groups that the Council never knew existed. All units engage at will. Remember, these enemies use dimensional manipulation. Stick to the battle plan and don't let them adapt. The second Devourer fleet found itself facing an enemy that was ready for them. Human ships equipped with dimensional scramblers disrupted their reality-altering weapons. Gravity cannons created gravitational fields that prevented dimensional phasing. Quantum torpedoes targeted the fundamental forces that kept the enemy ships coherent. Captain Alex Turner's INS Retribution led a formation of 50 ships against the enemy command vessels. Their gravity cannons fired in sequence, creating artificial black holes that pulled the Devourer ships out of their protective dimensional phases. Target their quantum cores, Turner ordered. Let's see what happens when we disrupt their power sources. Commander Rachel Moore's battle group used a different approach. The UN's Defiance and its escorts deployed quantum mines that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. When the Devourer ships tried to phase shift to avoid damage, they found the mines waiting for them in every dimensional layer. Commander Steve Hughes executed the most daring maneuver of the battle. His ship, the UN's Phantom, flew directly into the collapsing quantum rift and engaged enemy vessels inside the dimensional tunnel itself. "This is Hughes to all units," his voice crackled through the interference. "Fighting inside the rift is possible, but you need constant dimensional anchoring. These things can't handle combat in unstable space-time." The technique worked. Human ships began following Hughes through the rift, engaging Devourer vessels in the dimensional space between galaxies. It was a battlefield that existed outside normal physics, where human adaptability and innovative thinking gave them a decisive advantage. Dr. Phillips monitored the entire battle from his command center. "The enemy fleet is breaking apart. Their ships are designed for conventional dimensional warfare, but we're fighting them using techniques they've never encountered." Within 6 hours, the second Devourer fleet was destroyed. The survivors retreated through emergency rifts that sealed immediately afterward, preventing any pursuit but also ensuring they couldn't return. The quantum rift that had brought them to the galaxy collapsed completely, sealed by human technology that turned dimensional barriers into impenetrable walls. As the battle ended, the galaxy fell silent. The Council representatives stared at displays showing the aftermath of humanity's victory. Thousands of human ships maintained formation in perfect military precision, their weapons still powered and ready. "Impossible," Eco-Prime Kethver chimed. Weakly, "Your fleet was supposed to be small, inexperienced." Jake Morrison returned to his position in the council chamber, his diplomatic smile back in place. But now the aliens understood what they were really looking at. This wasn't a junior species begging for acceptance. This was a military power that had been hiding its true strength. "Our fleet is exactly what we said it was," Jake replied politely. "You simply chose not to listen when we tried to explain our capabilities. You deceived us," Vexthal accused. "We never lied about anything," Jake corrected. "We told you we were concerned about galactic security. We said we wanted to investigate potential threats. We requested permission to develop our defensive capabilities. You dismissed every request and told us to focus on mining and agriculture. So, you prepared for war in secret," Drift Speaker Yomoto said. "We prepared for the possibility that we might face threats alone," Jake replied. "Recent events suggest that was a wise decision." The council chamber fell silent again. Finally, Vexthal spoke. "What does humanity want now?" Jake's smile never wavered, but his voice carried a new authority. "The same thing we've always wanted. To participate as equals in galactic civilization. To contribute our knowledge and abilities to the common good. To be treated with the respect that our capabilities deserve. And if we refuse, then you refuse," Jake said simply. "But I think recent events have demonstrated that humanity doesn't require the Council's permission to act in our own interests or to defend ourselves and our allies. The vote to approve humanity's original research proposal was unanimous. So was the vote to approve 17 other human initiatives that had been rejected over the past 3 years. The Council also voted to establish humanity as a senior member species with expanded voting rights and territorial authority." Admiral Clark addressed the surviving Council fleets with the same polite professionalism that Jake had always shown. "The human fleet stands ready to share our dimensional warfare techniques and defensive technologies with all species committed to galactic security. We look forward to a more cooperative relationship in the future." The galaxy had learned an important lesson. When humans turned off their polite mode, they didn't become rude or aggressive. They became devastatingly effective, Jake Morrison filed his final diplomatic report with Earth's government. It noted that humanity's relationship with the Council had been placed on a more equitable footing, and that future cooperation would be based on mutual respect rather than condescension. The report concluded with a simple observation: sometimes the most dangerous species is the one that chooses to be civilized.